Boiling Springs, a small region on the outskirts of Spartanburg County, is a community of two faces. On the one hand, you have the interesting population center, where every day it seems a new apartment complex is being added to one of the three main streets of Chesney Highway, Old Furnace Road, or Bowling Springs Highway. But in between each of these regions lies what is essentially a dead zone. These regions are just out of reach of the population centers, and as a result are woefully underdeveloped compared to the centralized contrasting areas. The sad thing about it is that these regions are not that far away from one another. For Old Furnace Road, a single intersection separates developed communities from miles of farmland, and the expected access to technology drops drastically the moment that line is crossed. I grew up in a series of small homes dotted throughout the upstate of South Carolina, but one thing that has always remained the same was, despite living in towns with decently sized population centers, there continues to be no access to internet or a great bit of modern technology that allows for connection to the outside world. The spot in which my parents' house, my last house before I left for college, currently resides is less than a mile both ways towards a place with high-speed internet. Something that is basically required for modern communication on all levels, especially as we moved into an era requiring social distancing and the quarantine of those who find themselves ill. The reason that is currently understood to be why access to high-speed internet does not exist in between the highways that line the sides of the farm has been one of profit. Essentially, considering the fact that there isn't much there except for low-income households and farmland, there is no reason to move in that direction in order to allow access of communication. What this means is that the fight for modern-day access to technology seems to have become one of class, as the issue of profit has determined whether or not they will run wiring out to the regions, even if one is willing and able to pay for installation and access. I remember struggling hard with school because the vast majority of my work had to be done while I was on campus due to the fact that I did not have access to internet at home. Not only could my parents not afford a hotspot plan for our phones, but the only realistic way to have access to the internet was through a satellite plan, which we had for a time when I was younger, but the argument that satellite internet is worth anything in the modern day dies at the moment a cloud goes over your dish. It's honestly embarrassing the way that older communities get to be treated in terms of their privilege to have what is considered by the UN to be a human right. I remember being told by my teachers that if I didn't have access to the internet at home, I should just drive up to the local McDonald's and use their public internet. But quite frankly, the fact that the most realistic argument is just go somewhere else has always struck me as being very odd. Personally, the fact that I did become very techy through my friendships and my limited access through school in my later school years as a teenager only made it more difficult for me to interact with people as I relied more on others given my lack of self-reliance and capacity to use resources at home. In order to stay up to date, I had to be able to socialize, which was difficult coming off a long history of undiagnosed social disorders. Luckily enough, my social circle was patient enough with me to help me adapt to a whole new world of infinite possibilities as time had gone on. But it doesn't just stop at access to technology in these areas. Just down the street from where I used to live, a new housing development has extended a previous neighborhood, creating a stark contrast to what was old and what is new. It has been made aware to me that while the county works to keep the new side of the street relatively neat and trimmed from bushes to grass that borders the road, the latter half of the road is allowed to fall into despair in order to incentivize people to live in newer areas of the same neighborhood and city blocks. I'm not worldly enough or smart enough to make the call as to whether or not this is intentional. However, intentional or not, we live in a world in which has become more socially aware of the struggles of the modern person. The conversation of access to the internet and modern technology in lesser privileged communities is one that I have heard of and have been a part of for quite a few years now. However, it doesn't seem to be progressing in the communities that I have called home. My brother, sister, and I are grown and have started lives of our own. However, there's one truth that we cannot escape. The world we live in has changed drastically in just the past couple of years as our reliance on technology has increased and the way in which we conduct business, school, and other key public gatherings has changed probably for the foreseeable future. And yet there is a key delineation between the communities, even within a single town, that is capable of participating in this world of technology. Something must be done within these communities so that those who are born to more traditional or less fortunate families don't have to trail behind their classmates, co-workers, and fellow community members because of factors that are out of their control. It should not even be a factor as the minimal expectation of the modern world has changed even within the last 5 years. A world as fast and as loud as the one we currently live in continues to be too quick as to pass by those who need help the most. It is for this reason that we, the people of this fast and loud world, need to slow down as best we can to change the current path we're on so that we aren't leaving the communities that need help the most behind in the dust of a continuing revolution of technology.